I'm Chandra De Silva, and from this year, I've taken over the job of assisting the provost in academic affairs. And I bring you greetings from her. She is currently in Boston. I'm delighted to see this number of people today because I've been coming to these conversations I'm teaching, and this is one of the best attendances that I've seen for many, many months. Now, either it is because you're all interested in this wonderful topic, or maybe we have these cookies. But there's a third possibility. And the third possibility is that you really want to hear Gail Dickinson. And let me tell you, she is one of our distinguished faculty. For those of you who don't know her very well, she's published 3 books. She has a Master's of Library Science from North Carolina. And I'm proud of that because my wife is a librarian. Right. All the best people are librarians. But she also has a PhD from the University of Virginia. She's going to talk to you about a really important topic. How we engage our students, how we make sure they are creative, how we make sure they learn better. And she is going into an area that some of us know a little bit about, but we are not as familiar as our children and grandchildren. So let me say, we are delighted to have you, Gail, and I'm going to let you carry on from now on. And at the end of her talk, Alison will come and introduce the dessert. So you need to wait for that. Here you are, Gail.
Thanks. Thank you very much, and I'll think it's the cookies. I want to tell you that I'm very informal when I use technology for a couple of reasons. The first time I was ever on camera, I was doing a television show in North Carolina, one of their public TVs, on a panel. And I was asked a question. As I opened my mouth to answer, I saw myself on TV, and my mouth hung open in a state of shock for about 3 seconds. And once you get over that, after that, nothing matters anymore. So we're going to take some risks as well, and I do believe in that with technology. Someone asked a colleague of mine what's her worst technology disaster, and her answer was she's never had one. And if you take that attitude that it's just going to be fine. We're going to do whatever works. It's going to be fine. It's not going to be a problem. That makes the students feel more at ease, makes the audience feel more at ease, and then you can go and accomplish your objective, which in teaching is content. It's never the tool. It's always the content. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to say the opposite of everything that's ever been said in any meeting. If you have a smartphone and can text, could you take your phone out because we'll be using it? And I know usually you're told to turn it off, but I want you to turn it on and have it out when we can use it. I want to start with something called Poll Everywhere. And what I'm going to ask you is, when you get this at the next screen, the person you're texting to will be a code at the top of the screen, and then you're going to be asked to make a choice. So I want you to text a code as if you were texting 37607. Text that invisible person and type in on your phone one of the numbers of, do you Facebook? No, 332-328. Yes, but only because my children make me. That's actually that answer. And then third, and then press send. And let's see if this works. If in fact the link were live, which we don't know if it is or not yet, and we're hoping, a graph would appear on the screen because this is live audience polling. So if in fact you use this, and I don't see it working, if in fact we use this and the link were live, this would actually be a graph that would appear. So as your audience votes, the numbers would change. And I regret that it doesn't, because it was a really cool thing. But as I said, there is no such thing as a technology disaster. My interest in using, and we won't use your phones anymore, my interest in using online instruction and investigating how students learn in online versus face-to-face stemmed from about 6 years ago when we first started doing online school librarianship education here. We did this study, which we published in the Journal of Education for Library and Information Science, on the degree to which content knowledge was learned between online and face-to-face instruction. We not only compared final grades, we compared the pieces of the rubric. So in other words, if we had a rubric for the assignments with maybe 5 different pieces in each section, we actually compared each section of the rubric in order to see not only are online students and face-to-face students using the same thing, learning the same thing, are they learning different pieces at different rates. It was the same instructor, it was the same course, it was the same assignments. The only difference was that one was online, developed by CLT, and one was face-to-face. What do you think we found? No difference. No difference in content, no difference on any section of any of the rubrics. The numbers were slightly lower in a section of the rubric that's always logistics. Don't you have a section of your rubrics that's always number of pages, you know, written a certain way, cited a certain way? That section was slightly lower for online, and we think that's because online students did not have the opportunity. When you make an assignment online, you're moving on. Face-to-face, when the first part of class, someone raises a hand and asks, did you really mean 10 pages when you said 10 pages, or did you mean 14, and those kinds of things. So we started from this study, and now we're engaged in another one that's a little bit different. I'm looking at the community of practice framework, thinking about whether or not students would engage in online learning the same way they engage in the classroom. I teach graduate students, and this is a typical class, late 20s to early 30s, almost always women, sometimes one man. I've never had a class with more than 2. Generally speaking, preschool children, and they're full-time employed as a classroom teacher. So if I teach a face-to-face class, they are driving from wherever they are to get to campus by 4:20. They're finding a place to park, and they're walking into class after a full day of work. They have not yet been home. So they're going to be there for 3 hours, then they're going to go home and deal with everything they have at home, and then they're going to show up to class, to their workplace the next morning. So for my teaching, I don't get the engagement from face-to-face. It doesn't give me what I need as a professor, which is to get the engagement back to students. So I started exploring different ways that we could make students a community of practice as a class and have them engaged in more time, have the class be more 24/7. So what we are doing is in their very first class, and we do have a gateway course, in the very first module, I asked them to investigate communities of practice, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Then they have to report how they think the class would function if it were, describe what a community of practice in this course would look like. And then what do you have to do to make that happen? The very end of the course, their last module, which they don't see until the end of the course, is reread what you wrote, evaluate how the class did, and then evaluate your role in the class. When we have this almost ready for publication, looking at those student perceptions of whether or not we actually developed the community of practice. Was the class a COP? One person didn't think so, but even that person who didn't think so said it wasn't necessarily a COP, but most people thought it was just unbelievably good. The barriers that they saw were their time. It takes a lot of time to read and respond. They're doing group presentations this week, and I did 3 last night, and they're attending, so we're actually having different ones during the week. So they're online, they're going to be online 4 times this week for a total of probably more than the 3 hours they would be in class. So they see that it takes a lot of time to be fully engaged in online learning. Some of them felt that other people in the class did not engage as much as they could have. So for group work, that slowed down the group. The technological issues were not campus-based. It was home-based. Their computer crashed. Their internet failed. The university systems, they felt worked perfectly. In fact, there were kudos from both the library and the university systems and how well everything on our end worked. They met each other one time, which was at a face-to-face meeting at a conference. After they met face-to-face, they felt they needed more face-to-face time. Before then, you don't know that you need something if you don't have it. The reason we did not, we usually do, but I had 2 students who were in, I think it was Scott County, and it's an 8-hour drive to come to Norfolk each way. And I didn't have why would they be coming to Norfolk? And the only thing I could come up with was that they would be actually seeing each other's feet, because everything else I can do online. And I didn't know whether that was a strong enough, I didn't have enough content reason for them to come to Norfolk. So this semester I'm working in different, more engaging practices so they can see each other online more. And then we are making them come to campus for the summer times. But they do, I actually this semester had them introduce themselves on camera, which worked very, very well. What we found was that the class has to be actively engaged and participating from square one. I am not teaching people about the job of a school librarian. I am teaching them to become school librarians, and the act of becoming is always harder than learning about. So I am asking them to do, where's Lave and Wenger's legitimate peripheral participation, where they're actually doing small tasks about librarianship and then reporting back to them. So it's important to have them be active and engaged, and when they see how much work there is, it tends, I can usually see the cold water wash over them and the realization of how much time this is going to take from their lives. So active participation is just absolutely crucial. Librarianship is moving, and I know there are a lot of librarians in the audience, and we are moving from teaching information skills to something called transliteracy. Our students today are transliterate. They seamlessly move between formats. They read all the time. They just don't read hardbound printed books with words printed on a page, but they still read all the time. They read far more newspapers than we ever have, but they may not have one delivered to their house. So they seamlessly move between those formats, and I would agree with that. I'm not sure that one can fully appreciate Jane Austen by reading Pride and Prejudice. I think you have to look at her gardens. I think you have to watch that wonderful BBC production. I think you have to listen to the book being read by someone with a wonderful English accent, so that transliterate person seamlessly moves between technologies, and it's our goal as librarians to teach people to filter. We're also moving from collection development to something called curation. In the same way that museums curate objects and artifacts, but you don't go into a museum and find room M to find the mummies. That's not how they showcase their works. They showcase their works by theme and bring them out and rearrange. And so in the same way, libraries are digitally curating materials. So this is just a background to tell students about the world of librarianship. But the first thing that I do is 2 caveats. I never say to students, you will have to buy, because they've bought enough. They're buying their tuition, they're buying my time, and they're buying their textbooks. I'm not going to say to them, you have to buy. And the second thing is, the technology cannot distract from learning the content. We're not going to take 3 years to learn how to knit in perfection. It has to be able to work so that they, with a minimum of effort, can use it. This is a typical module that I use, and notice that I use YouTube on almost every module. YouTube is the best thing out there. I do a lot of video work where students have to video. This semester they have to videotape themselves teaching and then submit it so that I can see them teach. And most of them will be able to use Blackboard. But for those who can't, I simply say put it up on YouTube and send me the link, because almost anything goes on YouTube. So we can find almost anything on YouTube, and they are doing, when they do research, they use YouTube just a tremendous amount, and we use websites. So the very first week of class, I have to figure out a way to get them talking. One of the ways that I do that is to introduce them to librarianship that's not just staid and about the books. Every year at the American Library Association conference, we have the national championships for the library book cart drill teams. So, and it's a big deal, as you see, and so I have them look at, and the next year I'm going to actually assign this. They have to look at this and then invite comment, because I want to get them talking that first week to each other. I don't want them just reading the readings about community of practice and talking back. I need to get them engaged outside of the content about the field of librarianship. So this is one way to do that. And of course, you see down the side how many others that there are. And I don't know if this library has ever thought about engaging in this, but and it just gives a few minutes.
So I think we're ready for our very first team. So without further ado, let's get to this first group of competitors. Are you ready to dance? We're starting off this event by mixing up some hip-hop, soul, R&B, and independent rock for the sexy hip-hop librarians of the Round Rock Independent School District. Give it up! Captain, is your team ready? Librarians, are you ready?
Sweetest little bookworm hidden underneath the sexiest librarian. Take off your glasses and let down your hair. Take off those glasses and let down your hair.
That gets them talking. We also have a Facebook page. Facebook is difficult because I do not Facebook current students. I do not friend current students on Facebook. I will friend them after they graduate, but it changes the relationship. So I have a Gail Dickinson ODU, as ODU being my last name, and the students do as well, which means you have to go in and log in as your alternate persona for that. The students, we friended, Dr. Kimmel and I use this to talk about books and reading. We unfriended the students after the course was over. They kept on. And we just met at lunch, and it's becoming a little bit of an issue because they're now talking as a group outside of class and have a Facebook group to which we aren't invited. Very good relationship with their students. And I think students need, like after class, in a face-to-face class, students would go out for some coffee and talk about the professor and how hard this is and how's everything going. This Facebook group gives them a chance to do that and holds them together outside of class. My fear is they're interpreting content. And if they're interpreting content and interpreting it wrong, sooner or later when they present it for grading, it's going to be, this is not what I wanted. But they didn't ask me, they're asking each other, and we don't know about that. You can see the group of students in the in the corner talking. You can't see them when they're virtual. So I'm a little concerned about that. I use this because these are students doing a webinar on, and they're instead of presenting a written summary on Blackboard, they're using Adobe Connect, which is just wonderful. And I want you to, do you see Nikki Bernard? Do you see what's behind her head? Yeah, it's a dog. Oh. So, as I said, I'm really informal with technology. The students are as well, and you can see the dog just climbed over around her head, but they're presenting on the guidelines. We're asking questions, and we're teaching them to multitask and back channel. So they are getting very, very good at this. At the idea of, instead of doing a written summary that they would write as a group and then they would post on Blackboard and do the drafts, they can stop that process at the informal level. Because coordinating their thoughts into a written document, that last stage of writing when they're wordsmithing and editing takes a long time. And they can shorten that time by presenting it on Adobe Connect, and I record it so that the rest of the class can see it who would not be there. We did one last night. I think practically the entire class were there, and it's getting very, very polished. They're getting very good at this. However, I can't solve problems because I'm sitting in Elizabeth City and they're somewhere else. And this is an exchange between an actual student who was talking along and she needed to stop because there was a technical problem. But her speakers were not on in her computer and she couldn't hear me tell her to stop. And notice the other students trying to get, and that Anna was not her name, I changed the name. But do you see the other students trying desperately to get her to stop and nobody was around. So that's a flaw when you do things virtually, is that nobody's there. You know, everyone's all alone. But it was I thought it was funny. We use Goodreads, and we're still going to use that because Goodreads is kind of like a Facebook. How many people are on Goodreads? I think so. Goodreads is a Facebook for people who love to read because life is too short to read bad books. And I have a Goodreads friend in Chicago whose tastes are exactly like mine in reading. So instead of going to the library and browsing aimlessly, I just see what she's just read, and then I know that I will like those books. So we use those with students to talk about books and reading. This is really good. I use Doodle a lot, so because my email load is like yours, and trying to find the best day to do something. This is Doodle.com. It's online polling software, and I was trying to figure out what day everyone was going to present. So they simply logged on, and everything that I've shown you is free except for Adobe Connect, and I know that that's not free. But it's great because they can just check what time, and then you can look down and see what day am I going to have, what day is best for this. And I do this also with online office hours. If I have several nights I could do online office hours, I'll put up a Doodle poll and saying, which day would you like me to do online office hours? And then I'll choose the day that everyone is free as much as we can. I also use Wikis, and I know Blackboard has a wiki, but I use Wikis when I think they might need the content after they get out of the course for the semester, because that would be captured. I know Blackboard nicely stays open a long time. Wikis will stay open, not forever, but there. And I think that I can, click on this. Yeah, and it did, okay. Because I wanted to scroll down. This is a wiki for reference class. And what we had them do was anytime they used a resource for any of their practice sets, and if you're a librarian, you know what practice sets are because you remember doing them. We had them add them to the wiki so that this is every single resource that the class used for that entire semester. So you can see what a resource this is of reference books, because it's not just one student's work, it's every student's work. And wikis are great for when you want a picture of this whole class without going in and out of threaded discussions. They can simply add it to the wiki. And that really worked very well. We're also seeing students now talking about engagement, and I use this posting because this happened in my class. The student was trying to remember the name of a digital curation software that I used in a previous semester. And I have a forum on Blackboard called Hallway Chatter, and I explain that that's the kinds of conversations that you would have before class starts or after class starts, standing in the hall. And what I loved about this is the answer, because Dr. Kimmel is teaching another class right now. And notice what the student is saying. Pearl Tree, Squirrel, Storify, Bundler, Scoop It, Live Binder, Delicious, those are all digital curation free softwares that you can use that they're studying right now. So The student wanted to know which one was that we used, and the answer was, here are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and it wasn't the one that she wanted. The one that she wanted was Portal. So, but that kind of conversation about outside of class, a place where students can have that kind of conversation, because when you take an online class, they can be very alone, and it's not self-paced independent study. And there are some people who would like it to be. It is an engagement, it is an interaction, and every time they log on to Blackboard, it's like walking into class. And I want them to feel like that. And that does mean that their professor lives on a chip inside their computer. So I want to talk about what I didn't use. I didn't use Second Life. Steep learning curve. For me and for them. I have an avatar, I've used it a little bit, but it's not something that students are going to be able to walk in and use right away. And it's not something that's familiar to students. This is something that they would have to go in. It's a virtual world. And my consultant on this was my daughter, who plays World of Warcraft, and I was trying to get her to explain it to me. And then I asked her, can someone right now learn this game? And her answer was probably not, because it would be so hard to get into a virtual world when the world is off and running. So I have content that I have to go over, and I can't wait and teach a technology that is not easy to use and upfront and very logical to orient. And Second Life, maybe to someone who's in it, but it just wasn't to me. I don't use Twitter, and I feel a twinge of guilt about that. How many people tweet? Okay, and I'm sure you see the instructional value of tweeting, don't you? Yeah, yeah. Well, in the future. Well, see, I'm waiting to find the right fit. Tweeting is a back channel, and back channeling, or if I were back channeling, as I was talking, there would be a window of the screen for you to use your phones to text in comments about what I'm talking about. There's some research out there that says that when you lecture, it actually helps to keep students engaged, because it's a way to virtually have a communal note-taking experience. So if you're lecturing for an hour and students are back channeling in todaysmeet.com or Cover It Live or tweeting, they're actually gleaning those important bits from the lecture while you're talking, and they're doing it together. So it's actually a more effective means of note-taking. However, Blackboard does that too in a threaded discussion, and it's all organized. So I can't see, I can do a hashtag to organize the tweets, but I think right now better options exist. Actually, driving in today, I found a use for Twitter that I think I'm going to do. We require students to attend a conference so that they can get that professional experience, and I want them to tweet. I'm going to make them tweet during the conference the different sessions that they're going to. And if I say you have to do 3 tweets during the conference to this hashtag, and then reflect on how your experience compared with everyone else's experience. And that's a kind of assignment that I would do, where they have to engage and read what other people are doing and then reflect on how that fits with them. Almost impossible to duplicate in a lecture setting. There's just no way that I could have them experience that. So I think that might fit. VoiceThread is commenting as well, but it's all voice. So they would actually comment on my lectures so that they would use VoiceThread and comment. I want to use it in the future. I haven't figured out the best place for it now. Blabber Eyes is a great tool that you can animate pictures. So if someone is doing a report on George Washington, they can use a picture and make George Washington's mouth open to talk while they're doing it. And you can do with animals, so you could be a chicken and you know, do your report as a chicken. And I have students who would love that way too much right now. So they could make me, I mean, they could take my picture and make Blabber Eyes me. So I want to use that in the future, because one of my goals with teaching is also, you know, teachers teach the way they're taught. And I'm teaching people to be teachers, to be school librarians. And if I can show them how to use these tools, then when they get into, they will move down the hall from that classroom that is their social studies classroom to the classroom that is the library, they'll be able to use these tools with students. And that's especially important now that we are seeing the dominoes of bring your own device policies fall like crazy. I mean, right now it's just a handful of districts, and in a year it's going to be a rare district that doesn't allow student-owned devices like cell phones. And I talked with a school librarian about this, and I think they say now about 75% of children have laptops, almost 95% have cell phones. And she was saying she was teaching students how to do a technology problem, and they were getting frustrated. And we can't do it, you do it, you do it. And she said, what if this were your phone? What if you couldn't program your phone? Would you ask your mother to do it for you? She said every one of them pulled out their cell phone to show her how cool their phone was. Every one of those phones was more expensive than the one she owned. And it was not a high dollar school. So when we have these very powerful handheld computing devices, we can do a lot more with things than what we currently have in school. Screencast-O-Matic I have used, I haven't required the use, that and Jing is a way to capture, so when you're explaining what to click on to use, it would be great here in the university library, you go click on this, then click on that, you can actually record those clicks. Nancy, have you used?
We use Jing.
Use Jing, because it's really, yeah, you just, click on, find this. I use it because they're free, But click here, then click there, and students get confused, and it's easy to make a little video, just record your screen clicks so people can find them. So that's what the future, I think, holds. I did find some barriers, and probably the biggest barrier are the myths and urban legends about internet use. I don't have research to show this, but I would say from anecdotal evidence that the students I have, the two groups of students are very comfortable with the technology. Those young enough to be using it on a regular basis for personal use, and those old enough that they have children who are using it. Okay, that middle group who is engaged, the early 30s, they have preschoolers, they read all the fears. They're not comfortable with it. They're worried about, they read about Facebook's invasion of privacy and some big hoax on Facebook that everyone's sending, and they worry. The ads bother them a lot, because almost all of the services I use are free, and they pay for themselves by running ads along the side. We can't control the ads. So some of the ads are there. I have not found any that I would consider off-color or period ads, but they just don't like them there because they're flashing and there's nothing we can do about that. And they have a real fear about that, and getting them over that the internet is not going to, it's not creeping in through your house and going to destroy your household. An ad is just an ad. You have the power to say no. Most of what you hear about internet privacy is not a problem, so some of it is. So just don't tell everyone where you live and you'll be fine. There is a lack of confidence that I work very hard to get them over. And they're not some of them are not the techie in the house, which means that to them it is magic. Adobe Connect allowed their webcam to be shown. It wasn't that they made it work. It was that the Adobe powers that be did. Blackboard didn't let my posting go up. Well, Blackboard it's not a person. Blackboard is not going to do that. And they're not the ones who, I have to do this on Tuesday because my spouse will be home and therefore he can get my webcam working. And I can't get them, it's very hard for me to get them to see that they are the ones doing this. That if their webcam works with Adobe, it's going to work. And if it doesn't work with Adobe, which I really haven't found yet, having another person there may give them confidence, but they know more than they think they do. And that, because, if that's easier to actually overcome face-to-face, because we can make all the techie significant others go home and just have the people there to say, you can do this. And I really work very hard at praising that. and at appraising their ability to get online, about solving their problems, about how well they're doing when they present, so that I can give them the confidence as school librarians that they will need to actually learn how to do these techie tools, learn them quickly, and then teach them. I actually thought about an assignment for a face-to-face where I have them pick a free tool that they do not know how to use, give them 10 minutes to learn how to use it, and then make them teach it to everybody else. Because that would really force them to realize how quickly they can pick things up. Because if I give them 2 weeks, they'll take 2 weeks to do this. There is a lot of work involved in an online class. I like the flexibility of it. I think I'm a better teacher online. I think students are better students online. They cannot hide from me online. They can drop out of the class, but they can't hide. They have to report. They have to do the postings. They have to show up to do the Adobe Connect interviews. They can't hide as much as they can in a face-to-face class. And there is an awful lot of work. So students who are very busy really worry about having enough time. And my heart sinks when I hear someone say, I only have time to do this class on weekends. Because when they open Blackboard on Friday night, there could be literally a couple of hundred messages that they have to read, and problems have come up and been solved and moved on. They really have to log on to class every single day in order to succeed. Most of the tools that I use are blocked in K-12. It is a massive, massive problem. We should rise up in arms about this because all of them are safe. Even Blackboard is blocked in many K-12 situations. So they can't even, I'm giving assignments that have to be done in a school, and they can't bring Blackboard up to see what the assignment is and double check the rules in order to be able to do it. They can't get their ODU email up in a school situation. So they can't, their learning has to come to a halt as long as they are in that educational setting. And that's absolutely ludicrous to think that we are still filtering as much as we are, and I do the bandwagon about that enough. It's never about the life situation. The students who are able to steal time to do this, I've seen in all kinds of very, very difficult situations. They simply make the time. They get up early, they stay late, they log on during the day. They find a way to make it happen. I'm still engaged in research, as I said, about communities of practice, which I see as an important part of this. And one reason I do is because it's focusing on engaging those students in ways different than Blackboard. And I've had students push back a little bit. They want more different tools. One student asked if she could watch, she was flying to Disney World, and she wanted to be able to watch my Adobe Connect lecture while she was there. And I said, sure. She said, but I want to download it so I can watch it in the airport where there's no Wi-Fi. No, you can't, I don't think. You can't download Adobe Connect. You can't do that without Wi-Fi. So they want more of those kinds of things. They want to be able to do things offline and download, and then while they're sitting watching for a soccer game they can start getting they can start doing their classwork at different bits and times. And we are probably not right there yet. When the crowd starts to surge, every semester there's one or two who simply, I won't say they don't have the motivation, their life situation is not such where they can jump into that crowd, and they get very, very quickly left behind, and you can just see it happening, and that really bothers me. I think that it's partly not a lack of understanding about what a graduate programs require, and the needs of part-time adult students are different from the needs of full-time on-campus students. So I need to figure out a way to do a better job of explaining what life will be like in library land once they start our classes. And I'm not sure that I figured out, they know it very well after the first class, and most of them love it. They love the engagement. They like the idea that they've linked arms across time and space, and they're doing things in lots of different ways, but some of them do not. And I've talked with my co-author on this project, Dr. Jim Markin, about whether a community of practice, whether engaging students online affects their grades. And he says there's no evidence that a strong community of practice means higher student learning scores. And I would probably agree with that, but I think it would help retention. It would be the students who are in that surging crowd and engaged in not just Blackboard, but in all of these different online tools that we're using, I think we're going to be less likely to lose those students along the way. And I hope that when they graduate, they'll continue to be professionally engaged. But I think time will tell and a little bit of further research. So I've spent, oh gosh, almost 45 minutes talking about how I engage online students, and I want to open the floor for questions, and I'll be happy to answer anything that I can from you about that.
How many students can you comfortably manage on Adobe Connect?
Well, I think I've devised a way that I can manage an infinite number, but tell me how you have to be able to be a multitasker. I don't require them to buy anything, so I don't require them to have headphones. So I can only promote. I've had 4 students presenting at the same time, but I've had to tell them to turn their mics off and then turn them on when we're going to speak. It's the echo back and forth. But in terms of I think last night we had about 10. I think if you get more than 10 to 15, it's problematic. Because it's an online class, I never require them. My feeling is they've gone into this thinking that I don't have to ever be anywhere at a certain place and time. So I invite them to presentations, I don't require them, and they're always recorded and available later. But usually 10 is for the questions as well, when they start really asking questions for that. But it is a matter of demoting them. Last night I was constantly promoting students to presenter so they could talk and then demoting them back again. It's that echo from the mic. The pictures are not a problem. And I had a student last night who was actually answering questions with a crying baby sitting on her lap. And it worked fine.
Oh, I just wanted to know about Adobe Connect and screens. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we find it, you have to almost have 2 screens so you can push other things on the web out if you want. Now you're doing presentations, so that's different.
And presentations, I have used that, and it works okay with one screen. I do a lot. I travel a lot, so when I travel, I only have one screen, and I think that works well. But what I did here with the wiki, I have everything open that I want to do, so I can find it and it doesn't have to load, because there is a transition time there.
Yeah.
But I did buy another inexpensive screen for home so I can have 2 screens too, because I have one in my office and I just got spoiled. We also have 2 TVs, one on top of the other, so we can watch 2 different sporting events. So our life has become too. Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how you evolved as a teacher in using social media?
Okay. Okay. I've been at ODU, I guess, 7 years, and I was at UNC Greensboro for about 4 years, I guess, before that. And when I came here, we got a grant which really pushed me online. I was looking at exhaustion. And I tend to be hyper when I talk and use a lot, and it's just really hard to get someone pumped up who they haven't eaten since sometimes breakfast. They get phone calls that there are crises, someone can't find their homework, and someone has to be picked up, and it was just that face-to-face for graduate students, I'm not sure works there. So I started with strictly online and preparing everything ahead of time, and I wasn't happy with having the entire course ready to go before the semester started, because that didn't allow me time. That was so different from the face-to-face instruction. So my evolvement, my slow evolution came trying to make the online instruction fit what I like best about face-to-face, which was the constant real-time interaction. So I'm still searching for that community of practice class that will do that will have that real-time cohort of people that will allow for the diversity. And that, when I was at Greensboro, I taught on TV some. And I had 3, Greensboro, Asheville, and Charlotte. And that also allowed for diversity. And here we're teaching in an urban area, drawing students. But I had a student last semester there were 2 elementary schools in the county, each one with 125 students. And that was the entire county system. So that diversity of how education in schools that are 99% white, where everybody's grandparents went to that school, and no teacher came from more than 30 or 40 miles away. Having people understand that breadth of the educational system, as I work towards searching for that perfect community of practice class, I also have to element that element of diversity there. So I would say it's a never-ending search of just how can I make this more interactive, and it's working well, although an active class takes a lot of time.
I would like to encourage everybody to do it for undergraduate programs.
I would agree.
I have students in 11 time zones. Almost
Right.
all of them are people who, for random reasons, can't get to a college campus.
Right.
I have 3 young women giving birth this month.
Yes.
They'll probably come back to campus at some point, but right now they can't. I had a detective in Suffolk who was in National Guard, got activated, sent to Qatar, and didn't miss a beat.
Right.
Took a full load and did typically very well for her. The beauty of online programs is that it reaches out to those people who otherwise just have no alternatives. And there are a whole lot of really bright, talented people out there in that category. So
that's true. There are 2 library science programs nationally recognized by by NCATE in Virginia, ODU and Longwood. So our students only have, and people who live in a 9-hour drive to get to Norfolk, they have no other alternative. And I'm not going to make them cross those mountains unless they don't have to.
I'd like to make one comment and then one quick question. The comment is about the Second Life portion of your talk. I happen to be using Second Life in some of the classes, and I teach math classes. I'm in the math department. Once I ran a workshop at a conference trying to teach people my age, around 50, how to use it. College teachers, and then I also delivered an online a remote presentation to people up in Northwest, and I was in Norfolk, and I was actually presenting through Second Life. So all I want to say is this: it actually I agree and disagree with your assessment of steep learning curve. My own students actually took very well to this. It was not a problem. But yeah, the people in the 50s, my age, yeah, that's a different story.
That would be me.
Let's leave it at that, okay?
Yeah.
Now, my question goes like this. When I taught on Teletechnet, sometimes the Teletechnet camera is actually trained to go after a student who presses that button. And I had some students object to that. And I said, I don't want my face to show up on camera. Even though it's closed circuit, I still don't want it. And we kind of had to turn it off. Did you ever have a problem with people, even on that, again, closed circuit Adobe Connect, right. Were there any students who, like you describe your experience with that 3-second pause? Has anybody gotten back with you saying, oh, I don't want my face on there?
First of all, I want to say I do not consider myself a techie, and it alarms me when people consider me that, because I'm always going to have to fix something I don't know how to fix. I try to be very casual on camera, and I'm always on camera. And sometimes I'm on camera during presentations because my face, my postage stamp being there makes them feel better. So I actively work to not. In fact, the most alarming thing about this presentation was Allison asking me to not contrast with the background and the techie, the stuff, because I usually wear a t-shirt, and I've never worn pajamas on camera. But I also make it a point not to primp when I'm on camera, because I want the students to be very, very comfortable. Coughing, sneezing, my husband walking through, the phone ringing. I mean, I take all of those interruptions as this is a normal, you're getting a snapshot of my life at this minute. And I think that helps. Now, I've asked students to show themselves, and I don't think they know on Adobe Connect yet that they can't. I don't think they realize that they could have their voice with not their picture showing. And because that, I think that I tell them that it makes your audience more comfortable when they can see you. And they understand that because they see me. And I think because I'm so, like last night with the crying baby, she kept apologizing, but we could hear her answering the questions. And the baby was screaming. And, you know, that's just, that was her life at that moment. So I think in that formal teletechnet class situation, it would be different because it's formal. But these students were in their own homes. And I do think that that actual environment might make a little bit of a difference. You know.
Have you heard of TED Talks?
No, no.
You haven't? It's a really cool website where there's basically lectures on subjects. Basically every subject you can think of, there's lectures on it.
TED Talks?
Capital TED space Talks if you Google that.
Okay, okay.
There's usually a lot of lectures on there that could relate to really any subject that one would be teaching. I have a couple teachers that will use TED Talks occasionally in class to make a point. And I just figured I'd recommend it.
I'll do that because, you know, really everything's been talked about before by someone who knows it far better than I do. I mean, for community of practice, I found an interview with Etienne Wenger where he's explaining how he sees a community of practice. So why should I lecture about a community of practice when he's talking about it? So I'll research and use that because, and I do a lot with students also searching for things.
It inspires me a lot.
The
website actually, I find that it really inspires me a lot.
Oh, good, good. I'll look at that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Most of you are too young, but if you have grandchildren, talk to your grandchildren about how they communicate. I have learned lots of really fun things from my grandchildren.
Right.
And
we are getting more and more in the, we're Skyping.
There's just so much of it.
Right.
You never heard of.
Asking what they're doing. We're doing more and more in the cloud. I mean, I do a lot with Google Docs, even myself, and do some Skyping, but not as much, but sometimes. But yes, that era. See again, that the ones who are being left behind are the ones who have moved away from what they learned in college as an undergrad using technology, and the ones who are children or grandchildren are now using it. Those middle people, there's a little bit of a gap there I'm finding. Yeah, thanks. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you very much.